Thank you, moderator. I would like to thank Mr. Balakakis for this invitation. I'm not going to use the PowerPoint I have sent because I believe that the previous speakers have already covered some of the topics I would like to address. Allow me to speak from the heart and make a presentation that will attempt to criticize the planning and the design of the new strategic plan. I'm not only talking about the scientific aspect, because I fully respect the scientific competence of the organizing committee. I'm going to talk about the political and methodology terms that were followed during this planning. I believe that we don't have many active farmers in this room, so forgive me if I get too technical. Now, I believe we have two positive developments regarding the latest CAP. The first is that more or less resources remain the same. The pandemic helped towards this direction. And secondly, we have new policies and policy tools in place that will allow us to address and meet the growing challenges in the agri-food sector. It is amidst in this environment that our country faces its latest historically lost opportunity. I believe that Mr. Lianos is inviting us to join in a sincere dialogue. And I want to embark on such a dialogue because we need to talk about how we tackle problems, how we address these issues, and how we need to fix the various interventions we are about to adopt. For example, have we had any substantial discussions regarding the pandemic and how this has had an impact on the agri-food sector? No. The pandemic revealed some key things. First of all, the global agri-food system is interdependable, it is interconnected, and is of a more complicated architecture. The pandemic highlighted the need of eating healthy and the value of specific agri-food products. The pandemic revealed that there are substantial risks towards a food crisis in terms of the logistics and the supply chain. Look what's happened in England in terms of the farmers' income and the prices of those products. The pandemic revealed how critical it is the fact that we have foreign manpower in our production, and the pandemic is just another challenge on top of the challenges that were mentioned by the previous speakers amidst the climate change, the new consumption habits, etc. So, has this experience been included in the strategic planning? Well, I guess that during the discussion we will touch upon this issue as well. As it was mentioned by people who are more expert than myself, the European Union has tried to include those aspects in the new policies. My colleagues talked about these things earlier. I'm going to focus on one point that I believe is very important and worth mentioning. I believe that today in Europe we are faced with numerous issues, things that are more or less complicated, things where we have conflicting political interests, things that lead to substantial delays in terms of the completion of the strategic planning and the inclusion integration of the new Green Deal in the new CAP. We see a growing concern and an increased number of threats by some member states regarding the abandonment of the Green Deal and its non-inclusion in the strategic planning of the new CAP. To my point of view, this is a fair point, and this has led to the Commissioner showing a fierce response towards these threats. It is only today that I heard that some member states are asking for the extension of deadline for the submission of their strategic plans. Okay, that's one side of the story. It has to do with the key observation regarding the draft and preparation of the strategic planning. A second point I think is equally important is the following. We have seen a deficit of political dialogue and consultation in terms of the new strategic plan. I'm talking about the first point that has to do with the analysis of skills, strengths, competences, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Well, Mr. Lianos has mentioned very important things that the scientific committee has identified during the SWOT analysis. And there are some things that need to be carefully considered when making the strategic planning. Which are those things? Well, Mr. Lianos mentioned a few. First of all, the significance of the mixed plant production and the mixed livestock breeding, the increased demand for high-quality products all around the world, and the increase for products where Greece can play a key role, meaning that Greece produces low-carbon footprint products, high-quality products. I would like to say that recently the Economist food safety indicators showed that our country, in terms of the high quality and safe food production, ranks 11th in the global ranking. This is very important to consider during the strategic planning. Thirdly, we have the issue of the increase of export. I'm talking about export of processed products. This has seen an increase, and we also have an increase of the certified products, meaning that Greece needs to invest in the certification of its products because we see that there is an increase in trend. And lastly, we have a very strong presence of companies with high technological skills and know-how, and this is something that can help towards the rejuvenation of Greek agriculture, Greek farming, and play a decisive role in the significant role held by the Greek agriculture. And those are the important points that need to be considered in the strategic planning. However, we also have some weaknesses that we need to address. For example, we see a de-investment trend in the Greek agriculture because we see that the planning, and this is something that I say with the full responsibility and deep knowledge of this fact, I'm talking about the design of the modernization of the Greek agriculture. This is a problematic area. I believe that we need to reconsider, revisit our planning in terms of the various improvement plans, processing projects and programs. We need to focus where we should focus in order to help and boost the Greek farming. Another significant weakness has to do with the fact that the pressure exerted on the producers increases because we see that we have higher influx because we have massive consumption by the 10 big chains of supermarkets that control more than 90% of the market. Thirdly, we have, the all-time classic stagnation in terms of the overall production and the production factors and components. In the EU, we see a 10% increase in the respective fields. The primary sector, processing sector, and tourism have not been interconnected yet. And I would also like to add another thing. I'm talking about the chain of cosmetics, pharmaceuticals. Those are areas that can, of course, be interconnected with agriculture. And lastly, we have a low broadband. I'm talking about the technology issues. It's a myth that we have achieved the best broadband in the European Union. No, that's a myth. According to a report, I'm sorry, Mr. Haniotis, but my memory fails me. It was authored by some of the European Commission and showed that less than 50% of the agricultural areas in the European Union are connected through broadband networks, high-speed broadband networks. So, apparently you realize that this is an even more pronounced problem in our country. We also have digital illiteracy in our countries. And so when we talk about digitalization, this is key in order to address those challenges, and maybe this needs to undergo a more thorough review in order for us to overcome all those problems. Now, what's the government's plan? I'm very sorry that we don't have a representative of the government so that we can have a constructive dialogue on that. Recently, the government announced a couple of things. I don't want to bore with many details about that, but I believe that this is a very important issue to address. Let me start with the historic rights. It is my personal perspective that the historic producers' rights should have been abolished. There is a study carried out by the Agricultural University of Athens showing what needs to be done in order for those rights to be waived and how we can further address the side effects of this heritage. I believe that this is a study that should be carefully considered in order to abolish those historically established rights. The government did not go towards this path because they opted for another direction. The EU proposed pathway at the end of the programming period with the need to achieve an 85% convergence. But I believe that this is not a solution to the problem. This is something that just extends the deadline for the problem solution, something that is clearly indicative of the political and ideological approach to those long-standing problems faced by the agriculture. Things that just postpone those changes that we need here and today, and they're being postponed to tomorrow. Now, when it comes to the reallotment, we need to consider the small land, the small businesses, because they need to be supported through some other measures. Because I would like to remind you that there is a small businesses aspect that enjoy too many historical rights. And when we try to achieve this convergence and the abolition, if you'd like, of those gaps, we might be faced with other problems at that point. A third issue, it has to do with the eco schemes. The Strategic Plan Drafting Committee has submitted a 19 choices proposal about those schemes. To my point of view, this is going to further hinder the choices of the farmers. This means that this will bring us in front of other problems that entail other administrative burdens as well, meaning that the funds won't be able to be absorbed, or we won't be able to absorb the funds, and those things are linked exclusively to the eco schemes. Other important points when we talk about connected aids. And it is the government's will to reduce that. Okay, they set a specific goal regarding livestock breeding and the various feeds of the animals, but I don't think that this is linked to strategic planning. This is mainly linked to their willingness to boost this amount, because this amount will be dedicated to the aids and support. I think that this is wrong, because it shows that there's no strategic planning. It's just a rationale where we try to cook up all the numbers in order to make everything fit. Now, when it comes to the government choices, we're still lacking an overview of the comprehensive planning for the second pillar, because I would like to remind you that the strategic plan includes the integration of the first and the second pillars, because we know that we should have a single strategy. We cannot have two pillars being totally independent from one another, because we're talking about a European Union policy. But I'm afraid I don't have any more feedback on the measures that will be addressed or adopted by the government. I believe that they have already been planned, but they're not announced yet. I believe that we need to revisit key measures in order to have a well-targeted and established approach. And the government has still said nothing about the vertical goal, the horizontal rather goal of the agricultural policy. I'm talking about the knowledge management system and innovation management system. Last 2 points. When it comes to this strategy, I know that this is expressed in a very eloquent way in the provisions of the Recovery Fund for the agriculture. The Recovery Fund and the measures for the agricultural sector are not interconnected with the strategic plan of our country. And I take full responsibility of what I'm talking about because I have reviewed both. Okay, what does that mean? It means that we will have another option for the strategic plan, another option for the recovery fund. Let me give you a couple of examples that are relevant to Thessaly. Now, in that case, we have 200 million euro in the recovery fund for irrigation projects through PPIs, and the government has increased throughout through leverage and private finance involvement to 2 billion, but at the same time, it ignores 31 already included irrigation projects. 4 of them are run here in Thessaly since 2019 with exclusive community funding of 448 million euro. So this means that on the one hand, we're lagging extremely behind, and on the other hand, we have an extensive investment, 2 billion program, when we have other programs that have not received funding since 2019. Then we also have the Recovery Fund investment plans. Well, when it comes to the Recovery Fund, we are again lacking of a strategy in terms of goal setting, where we should focus on all the investment measures that have to do with modernization, which brings us to another series of improvement plans, another series for the processing plants, but those things are not linked to the second pillar funds and plans. And I believe that considering the existing funds, they could have focused and targeted on the modernization of the Greek agriculture towards the direction that we should adopt, that we should have clearly identified at least. And we also have the restructuring of farming, because this is a key point of concern for farmers. Well, when we talk about restructuring, we have all these millions without that being supported and backed up by a specific study. When we talk about restructuring, about reallocation, when you have a specific deadline, we need to follow a specific plan. And we need to see that the farming, the agriculture, accounts for 1.8% of the funds, 2.5% if we also include the irrigation project, when Spain invests 8%. Or 10 billion in a vision that has to do with the support and convergence of agricultural and rural areas. Okay, and Chairman, sorry for this delay. I will conclude with the following point. What's the methodological deficit in terms of our strategy? Well, let me put it another way. Rather than having the government or the planning opening up a debate, capitalizing on the findings of all this SWOT analysis that I mentioned before, the experience from the pandemic, assessing and evaluating international developments in order to make safe choices for the Greek agriculture in its future, and then see how they can adapt that to the European framework of the new CAP and the new Green Deal, they move backwards. They try to bypass it. They try to include stress-free this hypothesis. They try to allocate the funds and avoid the substantial dialogue with all the representatives and stakeholders of the agricultural sector. Within a month and a half, we need to submit the strategic plan of our country for agricultural and rural development. And the question is the strategic plan, is this debate serious enough? Is our preparation robust enough? Because we cannot afford miss such an opportunity, because I'm afraid we won't be offered another one. And I believe that this is an opinion shared by the other experts who talked to you before myself. Thank you.